A lot of people have lost a lot of money on the Juno 106. A few years ago, these guys were trending at $2,500 or even $3,000. And in the past couple of years, the market for 106s has crashed as the synthwave craze has died down a little bit. You can see they're now selling sometimes for as cheap in good condition as $1,500. But today I'm going to share with you my top 5 picks for vintage synthesizers that are going up in price that I believe are sleeper synths that sound incredible and are going to be worth a lot more soon. Not only do I think that all of these synthesizers are going up in price, they are also all currently cheaper than a sequential Take 5 right now. Now, of course, no one can predict the future, but what I can say about these vintage synthesizers are that I've been watching the market, and these are all right now lower than where they usually are as far as price goes, and they're all dark horse synthesizers that I think are incredible and are going up in value. My first pick is the most incredibly undervalued and greatest sampler of the 80s, which is the Korg DSS-1. Now, I know you might be thinking, wait a second, that's a sampler. This is a video about synthesizers. But what's so incredible about the DSS-1 is it actually has a DW8000 built into it. It has all the waveforms from the DW8000, as well as the same incredible analog filter, as well as an additive synth engine and the capacity to do really great multi-sample sampling. And what's incredible is right now, for some reason, these have come down way in price. Right now on Reverb, you can get one of these bad boys for $560, roughly half or even a third of what they were going for a year or two ago. So this is the perfect moment to strike. And the most important thing is, of course, how it sounds. And this is how the DSS-1 sounds. DSS-1 is a 12-bit sampler with analog filters and envelopes, and what's so great about it is, unlike the Mirage that's so grainy and digital that you almost can't sample anything without it getting just mangled, is the DSS-1 can sound really great, but still have a little bit of that vintage digital character where it's not perfectly clean. But of course, then you can also take that bitrate down and get those incredible old school sampler, dirty, gritty textures that I love so much when the Mirage is being well behaved. Every multi-sample can hold up to 16 individual samples, and you can put 32 different programs, which are multi-samples that also have all of the patch information stored onto a single floppy disk. You've got 2 LFOs, you can use oscillator sync and auto bend to create pulse width modulation. The filter can actually swap between 12 and 24 decibels per octave, unlike the DW8000. The list of things that this sampling synthesizer can do goes on and on. A piece of hardware like this is so powerful, and that analog filter is so good that there's no way this thing is going to lose any value. Next up, we have what I consider to be the most undervalued vintage synthesizer of all time. Real quick though, here's a little baby skunk that's lost its way, and it's in the Serengeti, and there's going to be a bunch of lions going to rip that little thing apart, and the only way to save it is if you hit subscribe for this channel. Okay, so what I consider to be the most undervalued, underrated, incredible vintage synthesizer of all time is the Kwai K3. And right now on Reverb, you can get one for $600, which is just insane. And here is how the Kwai K3 sounds. This synthesizer is a hybrid synthesizer, meaning it starts with digital oscillators. What's so magical about the Kwai K3 is the filter. It is an SSM 2044 filter, which is the same filter used on the Prophet 5. And it is incredible, and it's so cool that you can buy a vintage synthesizer for $600 that has the same filter chip as a Prophet 5. The oscillators in the K3 are digital, so they're more flexible than your average analog oscillators, and they have a little bit of that low-res grit that I like so much from the mid-80s. But what's special about the synth is the sound. It's that Prophet 5 filter, also used in the BPG Wave and the Poly 6, with the analog envelopes and amplifiers, mixed with those really flexible digital oscillators that can give you a whole lot of different textures. There's an additive engine built in. It's just incredible, great analog chorus, and it's easy to program actually, even though it has the dreaded alpha dial, unlike a DW8000 or an Alpha Juno, where you have to enter parameter numbers. The way this works is you've got a bunch of membrane switches. So it's basically what I like to call one membrane button per function, in the sense that you press a button, move the knob, press a button, move the knob. It's super quick to program, lots of fun, very flexible, and totally all-time greatest dark horse on any vintage synthesizer list. Next up, we have what is easily the most undervalued Roland analog synth of all time, the JX3P. And you can get this synth today on Reverb for $900. Here's how it sounds. The JX3P came out at around the same time as the Juno 106 and has a lot of the same sorts of sounds and features like the same DCO analog oscillators. But what's so incredible and what blows my mind to this day that has gone under-noticed by the synth community is that the filter is the same filter as the Roland Jupiter 8, the Mac Daddy synth of all time. For comparison here, Jupiter 8s are listed at prices upwards of $25,000, but you can get a 6-voice analog polysynth from Roland made at around the same time with the exact same filter, which, by the way, I believe a filter is the most important component in shaping the character of a synthesizer, and you can get this synth for $900. Other things the JX3P can do that the Juno 106 can't is cross-modulation between its two oscillators. The Juno line only has one oscillator and a sub per voice. It's got that great famous Roland analog chorus, as well as it can do certain things like routing an envelope to the pitch of either oscillator. It's just an incredibly flexible and awesome synthesizer that went way below the radar because it doesn't have all of the faders and knobs. But I can tell you it's not hard to program. It's super easy. Everything you need to know is printed right on the synth, or you can do something like get a retroactive programmer for it. It's super easy and fun to program, and it sounds incredible. I have no clue why these things are still selling for less than $1,000 because these things sound so great. I would take one of these any day over a Juno 106. Next up, we have what I consider to be the greatest hybrid synthesizer of the 80s and potentially of all time, the Ensoniq SQ80, which is selling right now on Reverb for just shy of $1,000. Here's how it sounds. The SQ80 was released in 1987, the same year as Roland's groundbreaking D50 synthesizer, and they share a lot of similarities. The SQ80 has 3 digital oscillators per voice, but what really gives it the character is a lot of the waveforms in the SQ80 are attack samples like the D50. So the idea is you layer a realistic attack with a sustained synth sound, and that's how you build up a really awesome LA synthesis type sound. But the thing that sets the SQ80 apart from the D50 and indeed basically every other synthesizer is its Curtis CM3379 filter chip. So you have actually fully resonant analog juicy filters, which of course the Roland D50 and Corgam 1 and all of the synths that came after lacked. And unlike on the D50, you can filter the attack samples. So that's the thing about the D50 you might not know, is you can't actually filter those PCM samples in any way. And in the SQ80, of course, you can run them through those incredible filters. They are really great. They are my favorite filters of any vintage synthesizer I have in this room. And I think the reason is because they have this filter growl. It's almost the same chip as the Matrix 12 and Oberheim Expander series, which is the CEM3372 chips. And they both have this really characteristic Oberheimy filter growl sound that I think is just so unique and special. So the Ensoniq SQ80 is my favorite hybrid synthesizer of all time. They are incredible, and the fact that you can still get them for less than $1,000 is just mind-blowing. They're actually really easy to program. I had bought a SynthArc programmer I had made custom for me to program it, but I actually found that it was easy enough to program it just from the little layout they had. It was very cleverly created to make it super fast and easy to edit your own sounds on the SQ80 to where I didn't even feel I needed anything else. So the Ensoniq SQ80 is just one of those synths I'm never letting go. They're incredible, and I believe that the prices are only going up. And finally, on this list, we are talking about the way to get a vintage Oberheim sound for less than the cost of a brand new sequential Take 5, and that would of course have to be the Matrix 6 from 1985. With Oberheim X-Hates going for $5,000 and vintage OB series synths listing for over $10,000, the fact that you can get a Matrix 6 with a stereo opping programmer for $1,425 is mind-meltingly awesome. So this is how the Matrix 6 sounds. The Matrix series of synthesizers are really powerful because they basically invented the modern concept of modulation matrix. This synth is way more complicated than any of the other analog polys I have in terms of what can modulate what. It's so cool, and it has that Oberheim sound, but it's got DCOs instead of VCOs, and that was a way they could bring the price down a little bit, but it's still got that Curtis chip sound from the OBX8 and OB8, and it's just a really awesome sounding synthesizer, and I think it's that way that you can get in on that Oberheim sound without having to go back to selling your ass on the streets. So those were my top 5 vintage synthesizers I believe are going to be going up in the next few years. I'd love to know what you guys think. Do you think I missed any synthesizers? Please let me know in the comments, and the best way to help the channel grow is actually just to watch more Vulture Culture videos. So up here there should be a playlist with all of my synthesizer videos covering all of the vintage synths I've had over the years, as well as some new synths and things like that. So please watch this video, and I'll see you in the next one.